for many years. And but in the meantime, he needs to keep the visuals down a little, keep his eyes in the dark, and sunglasses and things like that. But we look forward to seeing him again here on Zoom in a few weeks with questions and answers. So go ahead and start preparing your questions and answers. Okay. So do we have the, I think the verse number of Srimad Bhagavatam today? I'm going to look up my my notes here. Excuse me, one second. Okay, so in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we are in Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 15. Yes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadishya Yaton Varyad Itartars Karteshva Ibejanas Svarat Tene Brahma Tridaya Adi Kavaye Muyanti Yat Suraya Teho Varimridam Yata Vinamayo Yata Trisar Gomrisa Damnas Vena Sada Nirasta Puhakam Satyam Param Chin Dimahi Narayanam Namastrika Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devem Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesha Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So I think I will go on with text 15. Sabha Bhagavata Raja Pandaveho Maharataha Bala Kridana Kai Kridan Krishna Kridam Ya Adade. Maharaja Parikshit, the grandson of the Pandavas, was from his very childhood a great devotee of the Lord. Even while playing with dolls, he used to worship Lord Krishna by imitating the worship of the family deity. So we'll go on and read the purport by His Divine Grace as Srila Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 41, it is stated that even a person who has failed in the proper discharge of yoga practice is given a chance to take birth in the house of a devout Brahmana or in the houses of rich men like Kshatriya kings or rich merchants. But Maharaja Parikshit was more than that because he had been a great devotee of the Lord since his previous birth, and as such, he took his birth in an imperial family of the Kurus, and especially that of the Pandavas. So from the very beginning of his childhood, he had the chance to know intimately the devotional service of Lord Krishna in his own family. The Pandavas, all being devotees of the Lord, certainly venerated family deities in the royal palace for worship. Children who appear in such families fortunately generally imitate such worship of the deities, even in the way of childhood play. by the grace of Lord Sri Krishna, we had the chance of being born in a Vaishnava family. And in our childhood, we imitated the worship of Lord Krishna by imitating our father. Our father encouraged us in all respects to observe all functions such as the Ratha Yatra and Dola Yatra ceremonies, and he used to spend money liberally for distributing prasada to us children and our friends. Our spiritual master, who also took his birth in a Vaishnava family, got all inspirations from his great Vaishnava father, Thakura Bhaktivinoda. That is the way of all lucky Vaishnava families. The celebrated Mirabai was a staunch devotee of Lord Krishna as the great lifter of Govardhana Hill. The life history of many such devotees is almost the same because there is always symmetry between the early lives of all great devotees of the Lord. According to Jiva Goswami, Maharaja Parikshit must have heard about the childhood pastimes of Lord Krishna at Vrindavana, for he used to imitate the pastimes with his young playmates. According to Sri Swami, Maharaja Parikshit used to imitate the worship of the family deity by elder members. Srila Visvanatha Chakravarti also confirms the viewpoint of Jiva Goswami. So, accepting either of them, Maharaja Parikshit was naturally inclined to Lord Krishna from his very childhood. He might have imitated either of the above-mentioned activities, and all of them establish his great devotion from his very childhood, a symptom of a Maha Bhagavata. Such Maha Bhagavatas are also called Nitya Siddhas, or souls liberated from birth. But there are also others who may not be liberated from birth, but who develop a tendency for devotional service by association, and they are called sadhana siddhas. There is no difference between the two in the ultimate issue. So the conclusion is that everyone can become a sadhana siddha, a devotee of the Lord, simply by association with the pure devotees. The concrete example is our great spiritual master, Sri Narada Muni. In his previous life, he was simply a boy of a maidservant, but through association with great devotees, he became a devotee of the Lord of his own standard, unique in the history of devotional service. So for the benefit of anybody who began to listen late, I will repeat the verse, the translation. Maharaja Parikshit, the grandson of the Pandavas, was from his very childhood a great devotee of the Lord. Even while playing with dolls, he used to worship Lord Krishna by imitating the worship of the family deity. Okay, then in the purport, we see that Prabhupada points out how fortunate some souls are to be born in such a family where they are exposed to Krishna consciousness right from the very beginning, and of course, in such a family, it reminds me a little bit of in the music field. Okay, in the music field, there's a technique called Suzuki, and Suzuki technique is based on what you hear when you're a child. You just will naturally learn to do. If you hear the music when you're a child and you are taught, how to repeat it, you will be able to repeat it. If you hear another language and you will easily learn it as a small child. Well, it's the same thing. If you're born into a family of devotees and practicing devotees who are doing their devotional service, and you will naturally express those things as a young child, and where other people are playing with their, Barbie dolls and dressing them up and putting them out with Ken and to go to the beach or whatever. You're there worshiping your little dolls like deities, dressing them like deities, worship them like deities, because that's what you have in your family. You're very fortunate. And even if you are not so fortunate, of course, you can develop this blessing through the association of devotees. That's the other point. Some are very fortunate and have it very easy right from the start, and everything comes naturally, and others will need to work on it and develop it through association with devotees. And having made those two little points, I will pass the microphone to Mataji Lemanga, um, who probably has much more to say. Thank you.
No, that was very beautiful, Yemen. I appreciate your point about the children, when they're small. The point you said about it's called Suzuki. Suzuki, that's the good.
Yes,
Yeah, if you
yes.
teach them how to, play something, they'll know how to play it. Which is why often you still see this, but it seems like you used to see it more often before the internet, especially. A lot of parents would give their children piano lessons when they were young or something like that. Like I remember almost all the women in my family from the very early age of childhood, they were put in some classes to learn how to play some instrument. My grandmother, it was piano, so she had to practice for like 2 hours a day. My mom, it was flute, and it's because kids pick this up very, very easily. And so, it's like Prahlad Maharaj says, to his classmates that one should practice Krishna consciousness from the tender age of childhood. And I understood the importance of this even more yesterday when I was reading ninth canto of, no, not ninth canto, sorry, ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, because I'm preparing a Bhakti Shastri class. And in the beginning of this chapter, Krishna is talking about pure devotional service, and he's saying, for one who does not have faith in this path, they're basically they're going to struggle. They're not going to be so successful, and we can see that when the children practice this from a very early age, they develop this like natural faith in Krishna. In the same way, when they take up an instrument from an early age, it's like they can learn it much quicker. They get it. They're sharp, And so, and I've watched devotee children, and how, when they're very small, like they'll go and they'll pay obeisance to the deity just naturally, like that's their instant reaction. Um, I remember with my son, it's talking here about how Maharaj Parikshit used to play with dolls. And so I got my son some like doll. They make these dolls for kids, like little like stuffed dolls of like Krishna and Jagannath and Radharani and Lord Ram. And I remember I bought my son when he was about 5 a little stuffed animal of Jagannath for him to take care of because he would see me worshiping the deity, but because like I didn't, because he wasn't quite ready to take up doing that stuff. So I got him a little stuffed animal of Jagannath, and he started like feeding Jagannath his like his boga. Like so, whenever he would get some like chips or something, I would see him with his Jagannath, with his little Jagannath, and he would try to feed the Jagannath, and then he would eat because he would always hear me say, "Oh, we have to offer our food to Krishna first." So he was doing it in a way he could understand, but he just naturally pick that up. And then when I talk to other kids that were born in devotee families, they're like, oh yeah, I used to do the same thing when I was a kid, and my parents got me dolls of Krishna, and I would see with other devotee children how when they would play with each other, they would say, okay, you be Ram and I'll be Lakshman, or you be Krishna and I'll be, they'll like act out a pastime. And so it's very sweet to see this, and so we can see Prabhupada's words in everyday life that when children are taught this, or when they have this association from a very young age, they can take to devotional service much easier. Um, and so we can therefore see also just how important the association is. Even if we're not in devotee families, just being in the association of devotees, it influences us. Because even if we're not as lucky as Maharaj Parikshit, the our brains, they'll still mold itself to whoever we're associated with, and we'll get influenced by them. Science has proved this, that the brain is still um it's word I'm looking for. Like it can still have impressions, from who we're associating with, and that doesn't stop. And so, therefore, we have to keep ourselves in the association of devotees to help develop this faith in Krishna consciousness. But even if we're not successful, even if we're not completely successful, as I think Prabhupada mentioned, uh, the yogi who has failed to perfect themselves in the beginning of this purport, you know, we can take birth in a devotee family in our next life and pick up where we left off. Prabhupada mentioned in Morning Walk in Denver that if one takes prasadam, they'll get birth in a devotee family in their next life. It's a human being. So still, we should try, to perfect ourselves in this life because Maya is strong, and even with birth in a devotee family, you know, there's still a chance we could be swayed. But what we can take away, I think what I take away from this is that we can see also how important it is to teach the children Krishna consciousness from a small age. But for us, who are not so lucky, to have had that birth, we can see the importance of being in the association of devotees.
Well, I would just like to quickly add something to that because before we go to back to Rich, because in reality, being born, having a lucky birth, perhaps puts one at a greater risk of falling, whereas having a humble birth and having to work hard to find association and to enter into association will always be uplifting in nature.
That's the other side of it. You can have a birth in a devotee family, and you can take it for granted. So that can happen as well too. And having a more humble birth, you realize, oh, I actually am, kind of fallen. I'm in this material world because I'm envious of Krishna, and you see the importance of getting out of it. So yeah, that is there's two sides of it. So it definitely is the other side. So thank you for adding that.
Yeah. Would you like to add something back to Rich?
Oh, Hare Krishna. I had a hard time following because I also have an eye problem, so I wasn't looking at the screen when we were reading. But the only thing that came to my mind was, well, other things too, but one thing is about not completing the mission in this life and then being born into um, either devotee families or rich merchant families. So that's something I think about a lot because you know, um, obviously you wanna go back to Godhead and complete it in this life. But I think about what happens if I don't, and then I think about maybe I think about the future too much, but I think about like well, yeah, I guess it's good if you're born into a devotee family or a well-to-do family, so you can continue your Krishna consciousness. But I still think like, well, I don't want to take birth again. So it's just, it's just something I think about a lot. That's all I'll say. It's what I'm trying to say is that, me personally, I really don't want to, take birth in a devotee family or a mercantile family because, I want to complete the objective, the mission is what I'm saying. And it it's hard for me to, you know, I mean, I understand it's good that, you get to continue where you left off, but I'll just say that, I don't want it to be like that. I want to finish the job in this lifetime.
Reminds
Yep.
me of of some young people I know who want to have a wonderful career. They have a wonderful, vision of what their talent is and what it is they want to do, but they overlook that they need to go to college. And in order to go to college, they have to finish high school first. And so by the mercy of Krishna, one could go directly back to Godhead, but most of us go through a process that we work through in order to approach. And one of those processes may very well involve being born in more fortuitous circumstances in our next life.
Both of you make really good points, and along with what Dr. Rich said, I would say, Dr. Rich, you have first-class intelligence, if you do think that way. I mean, Prabhupada said we should try to finish our business in one lifetime. However, with that said, it's not easy. So, what we can take away from this particular verse is that even if one doesn't make it, Krishna doesn't forget you. He puts you in a better situation. But with that said, Dr. Rich, your way of thinking is intelligent. So therefore, try to finish your business in this life. But for some reason you don't, Krishna's got your back.
Anything more to add about that text 16? We could go on to 17.
Oh, is this is according to my Shima Bhagavatam, this is
Go on
15.
to 16. Yes.
Okay.
Because I turned the page and on the other page I have 17, but it is indeed 16. Yes. You can go ahead.
Okay, well I'll go ahead with 16 then. Hold on one second. Let me get this Sanskrit where I can see it. Vaya Sakishta Bhagavan Vasudeva Parayana Urugaya Gunodara Satam Surhi Samagame. Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, was also full in transcendental knowledge and was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, son of Vasudeva. So there must have been discussion of Lord Krishna, who is glorified by great philosophers in the company of great devotees. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word satam is very important in this verse. Satam means the pure devotees, who have no other desire than to serve the Lord. Only in the association of such devotees are the transcendental glories of Lord Krishna properly discussed. It is said by the Lord that his topics are all full of spiritual significance. And once one properly hears about him in the association of the satam, certainly one senses the great potency and so automatically attains to the devotional stage of life. As already described, Maharaj Parikshit was a great devotee of the Lord from his very birth, and so was Sukadeva Goswami. Both of them were on the same level, although it appeared that Maharaj Parikshit was a great king accustomed to royal facilities, whereas Sukadeva Goswami was a typical renouncer of the world, so much so that he did not even put on a cloth. So much so that he did not even put a cloth on his body. Superficially, Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami might seem to be opposites, but basically, they were both unalloyed pure devotees of the Lord. When such devotees are assembled together, there can be no topics save discussions of the glories of the Lord or Bhakti Yoga. Hold on. I'm sorry, what just happened was that my phone went back a page, so then I had to go back and figure out where. Okay, now I found my place. In the Bhagavad Gita, also, when there were talks between the Lord and his devotee Arjuna, there cannot be any topic other than Bhakti Yoga. However, the mundane scholars may speculate on it in their own ways. The use of the word Sha after Vyasaki suggests, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, that both Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit were of the same category, settled long before, although one was playing the part of the master and the other the disciple. Since Lord Krishna is the center of the topics, the word Vasudeva Parayana or devotee of Vasudev, suggest devotee of Lord Krishna, the common aim. Although there were many others who assembled at the place where Maharaj Parikshit was fasting, the natural conclusion is that there was no topic other than the glorification of Lord Krishna, because the principal speaker was Shukadeva Goswami, and the chief audience was Maharaj Parikshit. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, as it was spoken and heard by two principal devotees of the Lord, is only for the glorification of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. Okay, so Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, was also full in transcendental knowledge and was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, son of Vasudeva. So there must have been discussion of Lord Krishna, who is glorified by great philosophers and in the company of great devotees. So what I'm taking away from this verse is that we can see, or it is said, I have heard, that this conversation between Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, it was spoken really for the benefit of all humanity and for all the sages present. And we can see that because Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami, according to this verse and purport, they were already pure devotees of the Lord. So they're relishing this discussion because pure devotees of the Lord that are satam, as Prabhupada says here, unalloyed devotees with no other desire except for the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they come together, that's all they want to talk about. It's kind of like, to give a mundane example, whenever one has a particular hobby that they want to make their life around, maybe it's music and you're trying to get into, what is that famous place? Carnegie Hall, and somewhere. Or maybe you're, yeah, okay, Kimina knows what I'm talking about. Because when I took, oh wait, is my internet on? Or am I breaking up? Okay, no, that's it. Okay, so.
How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice.
So people that are endeavoring to play music on this type of stage, no doubt they're probably spending a good chunk of their day practicing. I had a friend who's very good in, I think it was a bass guitar, which is not a Carnegie Hall instrument, but still, he said when he was in his band, he spent 8 hours a day practicing bass guitar. 8 hours. Nothing else but like practice. So the point, I guess the mundane example that I'm trying to give here is that when one is really striving for something, they make their life around it. And then they have other friends that are doing the same thing. And that's what they discuss, And so, therefore, with the great devotees of the Lord, because Krishna is their life and soul, when they come together, that's all they want to talk about is topics of Krishna. What's Krishna doing? Krishna's pastimes, how to serve Krishna, things that they realized, and stuff like that. So, really, this is what's going on with Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit because they're pure devotees of the Lord. But for our benefit, on another level, they're also setting an example of how one should approach a bona fide spiritual master. Because on the outside, it looks like that. Shukadeva Goswami is this great renowned sage, and Maharaj Parikshit is this king who's been cursed to die in 7 days. So therefore, we see he goes and approaches Shukadeva Goswami and says, what is the duty of a man who's about to die? If he's an unalloyed devotee of the Lord already, he already knows. But externally, he's setting this example for all of us in the world who are in this position where we're going to have to give up our temporary material bodies. And so even though on one level, this is really them, just enjoying the ecstasy of glorifying Krishna. But for us at the same time, it's also setting the example of, what is the goal of life? What should we be doing? Which is, we should be, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, learning topics about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing who we are as spirit soul, but not just knowing who we are as spirit soul, because so many groups can tell us that we're not this body. We're not unique when we tell people you're not this body, you're spirit soul. So many people are saying this, but one of the things that Krishna consciousness we offer in our philosophy, is that we tell people what the soul does, what are the activities of the soul, and who the supreme soul, Param Brahma, Krishna is, which you don't get that everywhere. So this is really what Srimad Bhagavatam tells us. It has all these topics in here. So it's for our benefit, but on an internal level, is them, just enjoying glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, as Prabhupada is saying, topics like this happen in the association of pure devotees. And let me see if there was another point that I wanted to bring out. Okay, and what we also learn from this purport is that a pure devotee can be externally in any status of life. They can be seemingly as a renounced ascetic person, like we see with Shukadeva Goswami, who doesn't even have like a cloth on. Generally, you won't see that nowadays, especially in the US. But also, they could be a great king, ruling our president or something, ruling a country. So sometimes it can seem that the activities of a materialist and the activities of a devotee are similar. But what's going on is their motivations for why they're doing what they're doing is different. So therefore, we can also see the example given with Pundarik Vidyanidhi. In the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, he also appeared, that he was very opulently dressed, and he was in this very nice place. And Mukunda, he was even had some doubt. He's like, "What type of Vaishnava is this?" He appears totally attached. But when the pastime of Putana was read, because the Pundarik Vidyanidhi went into ecstasy, which is a materialist wouldn't do that, because a materialist is envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's another thing that I got that can be taken away from this purport, is that in a Vaishnava externally, they can be in any status of life. But what's going on between them is always the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when we become in association with such Vaishnavas, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam or by hearing lectures such as from Prabhupada, this also helps us develop attraction and faith for the process of Krishna consciousness. Anybody else have something they would like to add?
That was very well put. Do you hear me? Yes. I don't know what I could add to that. I think I've accidentally pressed the wrong button here. Yes, these are they are indeed fortunate to be able to have this discussion, but it's not just them that's fortunate, it's us. I mean, the whole point is that now it's time to get something that can be passed on and that people will remember. And here we are reading it and learning from it. So we can be grateful for that. Dr. Rich, did you want to add anything?
Well, again, I had trouble um, concentrating and understanding everything, but the one thing that stuck out is the beginning where it talked about, no other attachments than, bhakti or, serving Krishna. The first thing that popped in my mind was, I still have this mentality that, I want to be the richest person in the world. And, I understand that these devotees and the Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, they're putting all that material stuff aside so that, they're just focusing on the Bhagavatam right now, and the other people at the scene are they're listening, and I like it because it's like they've given up those other desires that seem to be prominent in my life, and I would like to be like Maharaja Parikshit in the sense that all he wants to do is listen to Sukadeva Goswami recite the Bhagavatam, and I aspire to be like him.
That's excellent, Dr. Rich, because you are listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. You are aspiring. One can see that you are aspiring to be that way. But I guess part of the point here is that we need, in addition to our own desire and our own efforts, we need association in order to make this this aspiration to turn it into reality, which is a relationship with Krishna through devotional service. And if we're not serving, if we have it all in our mind, and yes, you may be liberated at any moment just through your mind, but what you want to do is you want to surround yourself with other devotees, and like this group of sages who are gathered here together in order to all talk about Krishna together. It's not just me in the book, although me in the book is very good first step. But it's not just me in the book. It's a Krishna consciousness is for everybody. They knew it then that it would be shared now, and we're appreciative of that. And in order to share it, we must be in association. Otherwise, we can read it, but we're not actually Sanda. We're not acting out our love for Krishna in just absorbing it in our minds. Yes, back to Rich.
Hare Krishna, I know you just said it, but when it comes to the association part, um, you would still consider Zoom meetings and things like that, digital on the phone or on the computer, that still counts as association. I just ask because, honestly, I don't have a lot of time to physically associate with devotees due to my schedule. And I don't know if anyone ever told me, but I was under the impression that, Zoom meetings or things like Zoom meetings don't count as much when it comes
Yes,
to
these definitely count as association. This is definitely association. It's the best kind of association because we're talking about Srimad Bhagavatam. But there is more than that. There's an actualization in daily life, which those of us who may not be active in temples at the moment, we're not having that part. We have to put that in our house or something, our worship of Krishna, if we're. But association is what it's all about. That's why we're here. So I wish the best luck in all of us in good association.
Yeah. And I would like to, add to Yamuna's point, association of devotees. In simple terms, it means that devotees are coming together to discuss activities of Krishna or topics of Krishna, which is what we're doing here when discussing Shrimad Bhagavatam. So if you got two ears and you can understand and you can add, whatever you can add to the conversation, then you're associating with devotees, so it definitely counts. With that said, it's always nice if you can meet with somebody in person or if you can, attend temple activities. But people might be in a position where they can't do that. So but that's not to say that activities like this on Zoom don't count. They absolutely count because you can feel the results. You once everybody. I'm sure people have the experience when they come to this meeting that once they leave, they feel better than they did before before the meeting because you're discussing activities of Krishna. So and it's helpful, it's beneficial. And if we weren't getting something out of it, we wouldn't be doing this, or doing this week after week, or keeping going in spite of different impediments and difficulties and things like that. So, yeah, Dr. H, definitely, this counts. But if you can also go to the temple, that's good too. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to add.
I guess we have time to continue with one more verse, right? Which now this time would be 17. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Ayur harati vai pumsham uryan ashtam chayan asao tasyate yat chanonita utama shloka vartaya. Both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. Purport. This verse indirectly confirms the greater importance of utilizing the human form of life to realize our lost relationship with the Supreme Lord by acceleration of devotional service. Time and tide wait for no man. So the time indicated by the sunrise and the sunset will be uselessly wasted if such time is not properly utilized for realizing identification of spiritual values. Even a fraction of the duration of life wasted cannot be compensated by any amount of gold. Human life is simply awarded to a living entity, Jiva, so that he can realize his spiritual identity and his permanent source of happiness. A living being, especially the human being, is seeking happiness because happiness is the natural situation of the living entity. But he is vainly seeking happiness in the material atmosphere. A living being is constitutionally a spiritual spark of the complete whole, and his happiness can be perfectly perceived in spiritual activities. The Lord is the complete spirit whole, and his name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, and personality are all identical with him. Once a person comes into contact with any one of the above-mentioned energies of the Lord through the proper channel of devotional service, the door to perfection is immediately opened. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 40, the Lord has explained such contact in the following words. Endeavors in devotional service are never baffled, nor is there failure. A slight beginning of such activities is sufficient even to deliver a person from the great ocean of material fears. As a highly potent drug injected intravenously acts at once on the whole body, the transcendental topics of the Lord injected through the ear of the pure devotee of the Lord can act very efficiently. Oral realization of the transcendental messages implies total realization, just as fructification of one part of a tree implies fructification of all other parts. This realization for a moment in the association of pure devotees like Shukadeva Goswami prepares one's complete life for eternity. And thus the sun fails to rob the pure devotee of his duration of life, inasmuch as he is constantly busy in the devotional service of the Lord, purifying his existence. Death is a symptom of the material infection of the eternal living being, only due to material infection in the eternal living entity subjected to the law of birth, death, old age, and disease. The materialistic way of pious activities like charity is recommended in the Smriti Shastras as quoted by Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura. Money given in charity to a suitable person is guaranteed bank balance in the next life. Such charity is recommended to be given to a Brahmana. If the money is given in charity to a non-Brahmana without Brahminical qualification, the money is returned in the next life in the same proportion. If it is given in charity to a half-educated Brahmana, even then the money is returned double. If the money is given in charity to a learned and fully qualified Brahmana, the money is returned 100 and 1,000 times. And if the money is given to a Veda Paraga, one who has factually realized the path of the Vedas, it is returned by unlimited multiplication. The ultimate end of Vedic knowledge is realization of the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Vedais cha sarvair aham eva vedyaha. There is a guarantee of monies being returned if given in charity, regardless of the proportion. Similarly, a moment passed in the association of a pure devotee by hearing and chanting the transcendental messages of the Lord is a perfect guarantee for eternal life, for returning home back to Godhead. Madama Gatva Punar Janma Na Vidyate. In other words, a devotee of the Lord is guaranteed eternal life. A devotee's old age or disease in the present life is but an impetus to such guaranteed eternal life. What a beautiful purport. Both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing the topics of the all good personality of Godhead. Wow. Well, we can see that as time passes and we're getting older, we're getting closer to death. That's on the material. That's in the material, right? We're getting older. This body is going to die. We're getting closer to death. But if we are really in the spiritual frame of mind and in the spiritual world, if we are really advanced, then we realize that we are never going to die. And but this is, and the greatest joy is to talk about the Krishna. Keeps us in the mindset, keeps us there. But I find it very interesting because the very first part, because it says both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration. Okay, both by rising and by setting, this thing about, this is why we pray when we first get up and before we go to bed at night. And it's not just in us, but in other religions. This was the first thing in that the Jewish people say in their morning prayer. They thank you for the sun rising, for being, their souls being in their bodies. They thank the Lord for their souls being in their bodies, waking their bodies back up. And this this is in the morning and the evening. This is the time when we are at the closest connection with our subconscious minds, like when we're first waking up in the morning. If we can put our attention onto God by thinking, maybe by reciting, by chanting, by whatever we do. We start the day thinking of God, and at the end of the day, we go to sleep thinking of God. This is, this has been shown to increase the ability of students to learn. If they begin their day with their subject and end their day with the subject, it keeps going on in their mind even while they're sleeping. And this is the way to become closer to that moment when one may perhaps be thinking only of Krishna and be blessed with the Krishna's grace. Lavanga?
Yeah, what you're saying about the students, they start their subject early in the morning and then they end with their subject in the day. And then also with the Jews. It's reminding me of when my grandmother used to remodel houses, and she would do this from the time she woke up until the time she went to sleep. She was spending all day, remodeling this house. And whenever she would wake up in the morning, she would say the same thing to me. She said, I feel exhausted because in my dreams I spent all night fixing up this house. So it continued. So in the same way with topics of Krishna, this is why it's recommended, or Prabhupada wanted us to read Krishna book or something like that before we went to sleep, so we would have dreams of Krishna. So for the devotee, their time is not wasted in activities in Krishna consciousness, because these are eternal activities. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, the material body will be eternal if we speak topics of Krishna. but we can see that, if we're practicing, basically, if we're doing activities that we're going to do in the spiritual world, anyway, of course we might do them in a different way in the spiritual world depending on what our eternal relationship is with Krishna. But the main point is that we're discussing topics of Krishna here, and in the spiritual world, we'll also be discussing topics of Krishna and serving Krishna. So therefore, the time is not wasted because we're doing really what our eternal activity is.
Bhaktivich?
Yeah, I think I got the gist of the purport. I'm not sure. I just, I like how it says that, by doing devotional service, kind of like overcoming death, or you're not succumbing to your life being ended because you're doing devotional service. So it's like kind of like the solution to the problem of dying. That's kind of what I got out of it, and I'm very glad that we read that. It's a very inspirational verse and purport to me.
Yes, this is something that we can all understand, or we can all strive to understand that our soul will continue and will continue to progress. And maybe Krishna will grab us up and take us all the way back to Godhead at the end of this life. Maybe we could be that fortunate, but maybe we're in a process, and the process that we're going through, we're making will bring us into better situation in our next life. Kind of like to tie it in with what we were talking about a few minutes ago. So, are there any other comments?
I'm also thinking, where it says in this purport, even a fraction of duration of life wasted cannot be compensated by any amount of gold. So it's making me think, whatever we accumulate in this life, whatever material possessions or wealth that we have, we can't exchange them for one fraction of like time. If we need more time, it's like, you can't buy more time, basically. I mean, you might be able to access the best doctors, but if you get some terminal illness, I mean, there's not much they can do. I mean, if you see in Hollywood, at least in my life, I've seen a few cases of famous people getting terminal cancer, and they have access to everything, but still, they died just like the poor person. Like my great grandmother had pancreatic cancer, which is a very hard cancer to cure. It's usually fatal, um, although they can extend your life a little bit. But and then there was this actor in Hollywood I remember that also got pancreatic cancer, and even though his life was extended because he had access to all these medical treatments, in the end they couldn't get rid of the cancer. He still left his body. I think also another person, the host of that show Jeopardy. I don't know if you remember that show. He also, longtime host. He also, I think, got cancer and passed away. So and so the point is, in this life, we can accumulate a lot of things, and this isn't to say that to be rich isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you should put things into perspective that whatever we have, our possessions, they can't really save us at the time of death. Our money, our children are just gonna fight over it. Yeah, and really, that's the reality. That is the sad reality. Whatever you have accumulated in the bank, it doesn't matter how nice everybody is right now. The second you leave your body, they will start fighting over it. And I've seen this so many times, even with families that there was no problem. Second someone leaves their body, they start fighting. Even like within my own family, I've seen this with people who I thought would never go after each other because people become greedy. So that's what's going to happen when you die. If you have kids, they're going to fight over whatever you leave them. And, it won't save you. But discussing these topics of Krishna, they eternally benefit you. Not just in this life, but they also give you fearlessness at the time of death. So you're not and anxiety of what's going to happen to this person and what's going to happen to my house down in Key Largo. What's going to happen to, you're not thinking about these things. So even just, if you don't have full faith that there's a next life, you can see how just discussing these topics in this life, they forever benefit. So that's just what I wanted to add.
Yes, and the only other thing I would add is what Prabhupada says here in the purport. We're all looking for happiness. We're all looking for happiness, and we think we might find it in the material world, but we're always disappointed sooner or later. We may be gratified for a while, but sooner or later we're disappointed. So the only real happiness is in the service to Krishna, the thoughts of Krishna, the association with devotees, the conversations about Krishna, and this is which is why we're here. So if there are no other comments, we'll be ready to close. Are there any additional comments?
No, I think I said all I could say at the moment.
Okay, well, I'd like to remind you that you're all welcome to join us in the Zoom. We're also glad to have you watching us on Facebook. You can submit questions to Manunatha Maharaja, because soon there will be another question and answer session. At this moment, he asks that all messages be oral messages, because he can't really be reading the computer, So if you have a message, make him a little recording, and we will see him again. In the meantime, we will continue with the Srimad Bhagavatam studies here next week, same time, same place. All
Right.
glory to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Mananath Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Jai.